Traveling the Vortex.
We've joined Doom as she searches for the Doctor and arrives in episode 560, which is originally from the future, but got bored because everything's already happened. I'm Keith.
I'm Sean.
I'm Glenn. How is everybody this week? It's been a while.
I'm bored. Everything's already happened.
Everything's already happened. Did you guys do or watch anything? I watched a whole bunch of stuff in the last 2 weeks.
I watched a lot of stuff for me.
For you?
For me.
For you. For me, too.
For me, it's a lot of stuff.
Oh,
for you, it's a lot of stuff. I got you.
For me, I watched a lot of stuff.
Lead us off, Glenn.
Well, where do I start? I watched the first 2 episodes of Rebel Season 5, or Ahsoka.
Only the first 2? You're so far behind.
There's only 2
Yes,
episodes.
I'm going to lord this over you because I've seen episode 3.
Wait, there's a third one? Oh, that dropped today. I didn't even realize
Actually, it drops on Tuesdays at 8 p.m.
Tuesdays. Oh, I thought it was Wednesday. Yeah, no, I haven't.
Yeah.
You are one up on me.
You could watch it last night.
You're right. You are one up on me. No, I'll get to that later. Anyway.
We debated whether or not we were going to include that as part of our rotation for shows because we meet with Patrick on Tuesday nights. Mm-hmm. And it was like, yeah, the allure of actually being current on a show, it's too much. We've got to do it. So,
well, episodes 1 and 2,
current as you can be.
1 and 2 were great. I'm looking forward to 3. In fact, maybe after we wrap up here, I'll go watch 3. Yeah. And then still up to date on Owning Murders in the Building, which is still really, really good. And then I finally watched Wednesday. Got through all 8 episodes of that. That was a very enjoyable show. I'm kind of sad that I waited so long to watch it. It was a lot of fun. And then I've been watching. I went back in Real Time Productions. They do those Myth Maker videos, and I've gone way back in their catalog and watched the first 3. The first one was with Michael Wisher. The second one is escaping me. Was Neeson, John Neeson. And the third one, that's the one that's escaping me now. I can't remember who that was. Anyway, those are kind of cool because their first ones were done in the late 80s. So the show was still on. And I think the thing that I thought was interesting about going back and watching these is you're seeing these interviews with Doctor Who actors who... how do I forget this? Nicholas Courtney was the third one. And you're getting interviews with these Doctor Who actors before they were on the they were early in the convention circuits, and it was before they kind of had their rehearsed answers to everything. And so when you go to a con now, you can almost expect to hear an overindulged story about things that happened and these really polished, answers and interviews. And so it's kind of interesting to hear kind of the raw answers to these questions that I don't think you necessarily get now. So I'll be interested to see if that feeling continues as I go through them. And of course, I think the further in the series I get, obviously the closer to modern times it'll be. And so it may not feel as raw and unpolished, but I'm really enjoying those. They're very good. I got some movies in. I watched Maverick finally, which that movie has no business being as good as it is. And
Top Gun Maverick.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Top Gun. Sorry, Top Gun Maverick. Yeah.
You meant the Western.
No, Top Gun Maverick.
I like a poker movie as much as the next guy. But,
yeah, Top Gun Maverick.
Which one? Okay, yeah, Top Gun. It's great, isn't it?
Yeah. Really, really good. Like I say, that movie has no business being as good as it is, especially for a sequel that's 30 years later. And then we went on National Cinema Day and saw Barbie.
Yay! What'd you think?
It was fine. I really liked the message, but I didn't really enjoy the movie. I liked what they were doing with it. I think all of the performances were spot on. It's just the story was kind of meh. And then I finished Myth Conceptions, the series that I've been reading in the Myth Adventures. So this is the second book, and I finished it, and it was equally as good as the first book. So I'm looking forward to continuing that series as well. And I think that is it.
Keith, what did you do?
I watched Zack Snyder's Justice League.
Oh, you hadn't watched it yet?
I hadn't watched it yet. I just hadn't really had the time or inclination to, but, with Flash coming, or Flash being out, I kind of wanted to go back and revisit that, but didn't want to watch the crappy theatrical version. So I thought, well, I might as well give this a shot. And it was a lot better than I expected it to be.
A lot more of it.
Yeah, there is definitely a lot more of it. But I don't think it's necessarily to its detriment. I mean, there's a lot of this stuff that should have been established and done before the Justice League movie.
Mm-hmm.
But that isn't necessarily the movie's fault. That's more of the cinematic universe of which it exists in.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I expected to go into it and be bored because it was so long, and be not overly impressed by it. And I have to say, it was actually kind of good. It's not one I'll go back and rewatch a lot, and the epilogue was a little too long, but splitting it up over 3 nights was a pretty decent way to watch it too.
We enjoyed
it. Wasn't feel as long. So I did that so I could also watch The Flash, which I did, and I kind of liked it. I know, Glenn, you had said it was the best bad movie you've ever seen, but other than some of the CGI, the Speed Force CGI is really the only bad CGI in the film. And the rest of it, I think it's a fairly solid story with some very interesting ideas in it. There's some character decisions that I don't necessarily agree with. One of which being the other Barry Allen.
Mm-hmm.
But they also kind of justify it for me in the fact that he's 18. So yeah, he's not mature. He's not gone through any of the stuff the other Barry Allen has gone through. And so he is immature, and he is a freshman in college. So it's kind of not necessarily, outside the realm of possibility of that's how he would behave and act in these sort of situations, especially when we've already seen how the other Barry Allen is in similar situations.
Yeah, so that was one of my problems, though, as well, was the characterization, and I think you're being too forgiving. I think you're trying to find justification for it, but I think that he was a little too immature even for 18.
There also wasn't as much of it as I thought there was going to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
or as much as the immaturity as it's necessarily been commented on and portrayed upon. And maybe because I knew about the immaturity going into it, I was able to kind of look past it a little bit more.
No, I'll give you that. It's not as bad as people have made it out to be, or even as much.
So I actually kind of liked it. So that's 2 things I went in, and maybe my expectations on both of these things were low enough that it exceeded them. So I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, pretty good. It's neither one are ones I'm going to rush out to watch again anytime soon, but there was a decent amount. If Liam really got into, the DC superheroes and wanted to sit down and watch everything, I would be more than happy to sit down and rewatch The Flash with him. We also finished Good Omens 2.
I still have not finished that yet.
We have 2 episodes left.
I think we have 2 more as well.
So the final 2 episodes are pretty good, and the first couple of episodes are pretty good. The middle, it really starts to sag for me, and feels like they kind of are treading water a little too much to try to capitalize on the success of the chemistry and the backstory of the 2 of Crowley and Aziraphale. But other than that, I thought it was good. I don't like how they necessarily ended it, but I know they're kind of ending it in a way to set up another season. So I'm willing to give them a little pass on that too, just because only if we get another season.
Yeah.
If we don't get another season, then I'm going to be very disappointed with season 2 and probably never go back to it.
How about 2 seasons in a movie?
That would be fine too, so long as we get some sort of better resolution. Because there is a kind of closure to the end of the season. It's not left on a cliffhanger. It's left with some sort of closure.
What about 2 seasons in a book? Because Neil Gaiman has said if they do not give them season 3, it will be written as a book.
Okay, that would be fine too. So long as there is
all right with that?
A resolution to the story he has set up. The new story he has set up.
I tell you, episodes 3 and 4, we kind of commented on. It felt like we were getting so much backstory that the kind of current plot thread of what was going on had been dropped almost, so that we could get these very long, extended backstory segments. And so, yeah, I can understand that maybe it drags a little bit, but I also, at the same time, 100% disagree, because episode 4 had David Tennant in that hat. And I have decided that's my new thing, is cool. David Tennant in a hat. That hat in particular. Cool. So I'm okay with whatever happened, because he wore the hat. He looked good in a hat.
Well, and the long backstories were nice and very interesting, but I wish they had contributed more to the overall story. It felt like it was a distraction to stretch things out a little bit.
Mark Gatiss doing his whole Ministry of Silly Walks on his own. Like, everybody else was kind of sort of on the same page, and he's over here. It's like, dude, you are not in the Michael Jackson Thriller video. What are you doing? But I guess when you're Mark Gatiss and you're friends with Neil Gaiman, you can do stuff like that.
My other thing is a 2-minute review. So before we get to that, what did you do, Sean?
Well, we also took advantage of National Cinema Day and went and saw Gran Turismo, which is very good. I was honestly a little surprised by how much I liked it for a quote-unquote video game movie.
For a 2.5-hour PlayStation ad?
Yeah. To be fair, I have played Gran Turismo, and it's not a game. It is a racing simulator. And it just really kind of drives home the point of why I don't play racing games or simulators, because I can't drive. But
you can't drive in real life, let alone a game.
Yeah, maybe if I practiced more, I'd be better. I need to load up the game so I can go get out of the driveway. Yeah, no, it was good. And we took advantage, since Cinema Day was all seats, all theaters, $4. We went and saw it in the MX4D whatever interactive Rumble-Rama seat shaking thing.
The 4D Max.
Yeah, that whatever that is. And I can say that this is a great movie for that experience. So if you're looking to try it out, the racing and the rumble of the motors and all of okay, that was all very, very cool. I'm glad I only paid $4 for the experience, because it's a gimmick, and I would not shell out. I hadn't as of yet. Maybe next year, if we get another National Cinema Day with cheap seats, if there was something decent playing in that theater, I would go and try it again. But it's not something I would seek out and go, yeah, let's go to the Rumble-Rama theater, and the new Star Wars is out. It wasn't
I don't even mind all of the rumble and sound. It's the strobes. The strobes are very, very, very distracting to me.
Yeah, there weren't too many of them in ours, but they did go off. It was like, I don't know, and I don't know. They weren't timed quite right. The rumbling and everything was great, but the strobes always seemed to be a little off. So maybe that was part of it too.
Maybe.
And then we also saw Blue Beetle.
Ooh, how's that?
Blue Beetle is very enjoyable. It has a lot of heart, and it's also got a lot of Iron Man and Ant-Man and Venom. And I say this kind of unfortunately, because I said the same thing about Morbius. Morbius in and of itself was not a bad film. It just felt like a movie that had it come out 10 years ago, we'd all been like, oh, wow, what a great movie. Because it feels like a movie that was made before we figured out how to make superhero movies. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And now that we have all these other superhero movies, Blue Beetle is nothing new. It's the origin story, and there's a symbiote, and there's bad guys, and then he fights another superpowered dude in a suit. It's just kind of like, it's all pretty standard stuff that we've seen before. But there's very obviously a lot of love for these characters from the people that put the movie together, and that came through. So it was still fun. It was still an enjoyable little watch. It's not earth-shaking.
Hello, fellow time travelers, and welcome to the Doctor Who Target Book Club podcast, the only podcast to discuss, in story order, all the Doctor Who novelizations. My name is Tony Whitt, and every 2 weeks or so, I'm joined by a 2 to 3 person discussion panel, including our so-called expert who's been a Who fan since 1979. That would be me. We also get the views of intermediate, casual, and novice fans who either have never seen the show or who have never read these books until these podcasts, including
Dalton Hughes
and
Alison Fitz-Seyfried.
You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you find good podcasts, or even ones like ours. You're listening to Traveling the Vortex, a Direction Point podcast.
You are invited on an adventure across all of time and space, in a completely random order. It's the Police Box in the Junkyard podcast. Jump in the TARDIS with your hosts,
Eric Gulbranson,
Asad Kheshki,
and
Matthew Kressel.
Explore Doctor Who TV stories, audio adventures, and books, both novels and non-fiction. The Police Box in the Junkyard podcast. It's the entire Whoniverse on shuffle. The Police Box in the Junkyard podcast is a member of the Direction Point network and is available about once a month wherever you find your podcasts. You are listening to Traveling the Vortex.
Well, Keith, as you mentioned, you did one other thing this week, and that was a listen to an audio.
Yeah, I listened to the 9th Doctor box set, Travel in Hope. And this is going to be my something new 2-minute review. So this is a box set composed of 3 stories. The first one below there is a very cool kind of horror-esque story of this woman on a space station, a relay station. T-Mat has been bought out by this company, and she's alone on this relay station for this Transmat company, and the Doctor is trying to communicate with her, and things get kind of wonky, and she sees things that she doesn't think are there, and they're visions of the future, and it's just really atmospheric and really clever story that I thoroughly enjoyed. The second story was a one called The Butler Did It, where the Doctor lands in a spaceship repair port and has to solve a murder. Or an attempted murder, and it's very fun, very cheeky. He makes lots of references to Murder, She Wrote throughout the whole thing, and it's just a very, very fun story. The final one is Run, which is probably the best one out of these 3, even though it is a political story. It is the early career of Alpha Centauri. They go off to be a senator in the Galactic Federation, and it's their first foray into politics, and they get swept in this intrigue, and it's really a story about how democracy can easily die and what it takes to try to instill hope and help it survive throughout those who would try to take it down. It's a really good story. It's a great political thriller with Alpha Centauri as kind of the head person and the Doctor as his. And that is my something new 2-minute review.
Sounds intriguing.
Yeah, sounds like a good story.
Yeah, the whole box set is really well done, and it's more 9th Doctor. It's kind of nice in the fact of this box set. You don't have to. You could jump into any of them. They don't connect. They're just all standalone stories, but they all kind of have a theme of hope running throughout them.
This is Tim Trelaw.
This is David J. Howe.
I'm Peter Purvis.
I am Sadie Miller. This is Lauren Cornelius.
Larry, it's Fraser.
For all things in the Doctor Who collecting world and beyond, the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. I'm Larry Van Mersbergen, your host, and I've been collecting for 42 years. You're listening to Traveling the Vortex on the Direction Point Podcast Network.
We are going on a journey, a very long journey, through the world of the Target novelizations in publication order. Every week, we are looking at a new book, talking about Terrence Dicks, Malcolm Hulk, and all our Doctor Who novelization friends. Whatever you do, keep turning the pages. This is Jason Miller of the Doctor Who Literature Podcast, a member of the Direction Point Podcast Network, and you are listening to Traveling the Vortex, a Direction Point podcast.
All right, well, let's talk about some news.
Yeah, they have announced that newly remastered series 1 through 4, that is the Christopher Eccleston and David Tennant run, will be on Blu-ray coming out. And additional newly upscaled versions.
Okay, so for somebody who is still, the technological Neanderthal, I have these seasons on Blu-ray. How more high def can they get? I mean, it's not like a 4K restoration or anything.
Right. Well, and we talked a little bit about this off. I'm going to feel like I'm repeating myself, but yeah. So I mean, the first 4 seasons were shot in standard definition. Actually, I think they were shot in higher quality, but they were mastered in standard definition, and probably because it was cheaper at the time. And so now what they'll do is they'll convert those to remaster those. I bet they'll get it to 1080p. I'm like you, I don't know that we're going to get 4K remasters, but I bet they get it up to 1080p. And they do a lot with computers, so I guess who knows? They won't have to convert now they're doing 1 through 4, so I guess they aren't doing the specials, or are they?
They
doing
are.
Yeah, okay,
they're lumping those in as series 4.
So it makes sense, since that would finish the 10th Doctor run. So those are already in those were already shot in high definition. Actually, I'm not sure that's even true. I think Planet of the Dead wasn't, but all the rest of them were. Or no, Next Doctor wasn't. Seems like there was one. I may be wrong. Seemed like there was one of them that wasn't, and that it was like the second special which would have been Planet of the Dead. Anyway, those
I
are
know
already
for sure from Matt Smith going on. They were shot.
Yeah, no, they most definitely were from Matt Smith, but most if not all of the David Tennant specials were as well. So. I think that if they just do this and then just don't really do anything more, like more bonus features and more specials and things like that, or we lose a lot of the bonus features that are in the original discs, then I just don't know that it's worth upscaling these. Have you
According
seen?
to the article, all existing bonus features and a newly specialty shot extra, a look back to time and space with Russell T Davies and David Tennant will be included.
Okay, so this probably would be worth a upgrade, a purchase then, if all of that's going to be included.
So right now there is no announcement for a U.S. release.
Yeah,
that doesn't mean anything. But I guess so. Here's my question I just thought of. They did a big box set, at least in the U.S., on Blu-ray for the David Tennant era. I can't remember if Christopher Eccleston's era was included. Did the UK get that too, or is this kind of that version?
Well,
of that?
this is technically our third go round with the Blu-rays, because they put the first and second Doctor season on Blu-ray and they released that, and then they did all of the rest of them. So there was that version, and then there was the one that we have here in the US, which was just the David Tennant. There is a
non-conforming box.
Right. There is a Blu-ray, individual Blu-ray disc of season 1, because I have that, and that was US as well, maybe UK. So they've gone to Blu-ray with these before. This is the first time that they're remastering them so that they actually will be in high definition. So they upscale on Blu-ray. They take and they upscale the video when they put them on Blu-ray, so they you don't notice the standard definition as much. But as I was saying earlier to you guys, I can see the standard definition even on the Blu-ray copies that we have. So it might be worth it if they can upconvert these very well and make it look good. These might be worth it if we even get it here. Even if we even get it here in the US.
Yeah,
I have the same thing, Glenn, where I've got the Ninth Doctor by himself, and then the David Tennant collection on Blu-ray. And I seem to remember, it seemed like I thought these came out first. Maybe I was just really far behind in picking them up. But then I saw that there was a full, here's all 5 seasons
the ones,
together set.
You're right.
That it was available here in the States.
No, you're right. The ones that we have came out first, and then there was the bigger box set where they did the entire series. Or not the entire series, but then, well, actually I think there's another Blu-ray set that is the entire new series. So this is probably the 5th time we have Blu-ray. They're really getting their money out of these Blu-rays, aren't they?
Oh, I think you're right, up through Capaldi.
Yeah.
There was one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, speaking of maybe or maybe not available in North America.
Yeah, actually, so another thing that right now is exclusive to the UK is one of the things that we're going to be doing for our review, which is Doomsday Extraction Point. We learned just recently that this is the actual hardback book won't be available in the US until I think it's next month, or maybe it's even October. But however, fortunately, the digital copy is available to download, and so we were able to still get copies of this to read, and so there's where we're going to go next is our review of Doomsday Extraction Point, and then a little bit later we will talk about Doomsday Part 2, or aka Wrong Place at the Right Time, which is the Doctor Who Lost in Time mobile game or special event. Keith, you want to give us a synopsis for Doomsday Extraction Point?
Yes. The finest time-traveling assassin in the cosmos is running scared. Doom's own death is coming for her in a matter of hours, and the only person in the universe who might just be able to save her is the Doctor, so long as it's the right Doctor. But as soon as Doom searches for aid, the hits keep coming in. Kill a Krabby Crawl in his replica world. Assassinate a ghost on Satellite 5. Eliminate a living asteroid. Doom finds her talents and patience stretched to a breaking point. But these apparently random jobs are linked in a way Doom could never imagine. And when not one, but 2 different doctors get involved on the trail of an old enemy, the ensuing fireworks might just end the lives of billions. Can Doom solve the mystery before her allotted hours are up? It's not only a planet she must save from destruction, but herself.
I'm going to give it a bump.
I'm going to give it a bump as well. I really enjoyed the book. It's not a masterpiece in writing by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a really fun story, and it does a really good job of weaving through 3 different hours, which seemingly 3 different stories that really do end up weaving back into each other. And I like how the first story moves into the second story and makes callbacks to the story before, but doesn't really connect as much as you think it would until you get to the third story, which then starts to really call back, and really you start to see the connections. And then the fourth story kind of bringing it all together at the end, I thought was really, really well done.
Yeah, I would agree. The way the author was able to set up these unique individual stories or hits and then make them cross into each other and then merge together at the end, I thought was a very well thought out and very well executed bit of storytelling.
The first story,
I concur.
The first story,
I've been Jinx, show me a Coke.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I concur with. I think I've been kind of vocal that one of my complaints about the whole Doomsday arc is we're just jumping from time slot to time slot to time slot, and we have an hour to solve a problem, and then the doctor's not there, or it's the wrong one, and we jump out and we do it again. And I was worried that we were going to just get 24 hours of this, and then there wouldn't be a payoff for it. That we get to the final episode and they would, finish the story, but not necessarily make all the other jumps worth it. This book, I feel like, is kind of in a microcosm of what I'm hoping for from the larger event.
Mm-hmm.
That there are going to be these little ties that we can't see now because we've only gotten, the first half of the story. and that once we get into the back half of things, that more stuff starts to tie in together, and we go, oh wait, I remember that, and that it pulls together and creates a cohesively whole narrative. And I thought they did a very good job with that in the book.
I think what it benefits from is this is one author writing 4 different stories. And so they're able to weave that narrative through the whole thing and connect it. I think that's where the other previous ones have fallen down. And quite honestly, the Doctor Who magazine set of stories really was the one that could have done this as well, but chose not to, chose to tell 4 different stories. And so I think that's why it's felt that way so far, is because it really is just different authors given a little bit of information or an outline on Doom and then saying, go off and write your story. And which I haven't disliked anything that we've read, or I guess it's all been read so far, but this one, because you gave one author 4 hours, and this, M.G. Harris can take those 4 hours and make it look like 4 different stories that all interconnect. That's the right way to do this. And I think that going forward, if that can happen again, although we're running out of Doomsday, this is what, hour 14? Does this go up to 14?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we don't have very many hours left. I guess there's still 10 hours left, but knowing what I know about stories in the future, it kind of feels like it'll be a return to norm, but that's just spoilers for now. So,
well, and for being the same author for all 4 of these parts, I also felt like each segment kind of had a distinct feel to it. The first segment was very James Bond.
Oh, that's what I was going to say earlier, was that felt like a James Bond novel. Completely felt like a James Bond novel.
I mean, not just in the setting. Of course, we were on a ski slope, and we've got a gondola ride that you're climbing up on top of, and all this kind of stuff. And then there's a hidden base in the mountain, and it was very Bond template throughout the proceedings, which was great. It was a great adventure yarn. And then the second one, I don't know that it fit necessarily a specific genre, other than it really took me back to Satellite 5.
Yeah,
it's a great follow-up to that Ninth Doctor story, and helps it make it, to me, the entire book, but probably because so much of the Ninth Doctor is in it, plus the villain that shows up at the end, feels like it's all a Ninth Doctor era story.
Yeah, it really feels,
and this helps set that groundwork.
It feels like Satellite 5, other than what was the Jaggerfest, was
the mighty Jaggerfest.
Yeah, was dispatched of and was no longer controlling Satellite 5. It still feels like Satellite 5. It feels like not a lot has changed. And I think that's what makes it feel a lot like that episode in a good way. And in fact, right down to the fact that they're shooting this ghost chasing story on the station was very much in line with what was kind of happening on that station back in that Ninth Doctor story. So yeah, I like the fact that they harken back to that, even that style of storytelling. And it really feels very much like Satellite 5 feels very familiar, even though it's a completely different story and we're talking about different trappings here. It really feels familiar to us based on the fact that they kept it just, that much the same. And I think that's what makes that work.
All right. So
it also helps that they go up to, the floor 500 and the bodies are still there. And
Right.
The body of the Jaggerfest is still there also. Yeah, not much has changed.
Did anybody else get I guess let me rephrase it this way. What were your guys' thoughts on segment 3? Did it bring up and evoke any specific memory or feeling for you?
That's the one on the asteroid, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that it did. It of the 3 or of the 4 stories, that one to me felt the most Doctor Who, most doctory.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I don't know that I could pinpoint a specific episode, but it really felt like a traditional Doctor Who story. And so I think that's why that's what that invoked to me.
Keith?
I don't know if it really invoked anything specifically. It obviously did for you.
I very much got a Fourth Doctor vibe.
Yeah,
I could see that.
We had so many Fourth Doctor stories that were kind of loosely Hammer horror films, or the one in particular that I thought it was Underworld with Thad Coma-Cree.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
It just kind of had that foreboding sense of we are stuck somewhere, and even the invisible enemy, just lots of cramped corridor running,
very
and
claustrophobic.
then there was a spaceship, and bugs.
Yep.
Okay, yeah. That's a Tom Baker story there.
Hive bugs at that.
Yeah.
Hive robot bugs.
Yeah.
I can't put my finger on 4 though.
Yeah, no, 4 I think for me feels the most wide open. It doesn't feel like it's anything at all. In fact, it feels like its own story. I would struggle to compare it to anything, because it felt
maybe because it's the culmination.
Well, it may be, yeah.
Everything together.
There's some, but it also, it stands aside as well, because I suppose maybe if I were to liken it to anything, it would be the feel of, it's not coming to mind now. There's another story that maybe it'll come to me later. It feels so different from anything, and it feels so different from the first 3 stories, even though it does finally tie everything together and wrap everything up very nicely. It feels the most different. So because it didn't invoke an idea of a previous story or previous, idea, I think it felt the most different to me, which I think was good, because it steps away and does its own thing. And it doesn't rely on having any sort of atmosphere or mood that you're familiar with. So it works really well on its own.
Yeah, and to be clear, I mean this to be complimentary when I'm saying it reminded me of this. It's not that they stole an idea or anything. It's just that the vibe of the story was fun, because it felt to me like it was hearkening back and paying homage to, or whatever. And yeah, it's odd that the 4th part doesn't, considering that we return to locations that we've already been to, and so much of the other parts are present, and yet it's its own thing for the climax, which is I think very much a hallmark of good writing.
Yeah,
I would say, if anything, the final part would hearken me back more towards World War III, just because of the Slitheen aspect of it, probably more than anything else.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. What's amazing about this is, how much I despise the Slitheen. But I didn't have a problem with them here. And I think because part of it is because you already get past the ridiculousness of the characters or the species.
You don't have to see them.
Well, that too, but you get past the ridiculousness of the way that works. And so in this one, because you're already past that, everything is very much in the MO of the family, and so it works well. And so I didn't have a problem with them in this one. I would have rather it been another monster, but I also like the fact that when the author's very descriptive, and Doom even is very descriptive about the baby face and how it wobbles when it walks, and it points those things out, which are those things that in the episode were, to me, a detriment to it. But in this, it's like, we're not taking them so serious. We're going to actually point these things out as we use them as our villain. And so it works in that way, because they didn't, dance around the fact that it's a stupid villain. It's a stupid species, but they just went full forward with it. And so I appreciated that and respected the fact that they did that.
The other great thing they do is, even though it's on the cover, in order to keep them a secret, they came up with the idea that, oh, well, they fixed the gas problem, where they aren't as flatulent and gassy,
in fact,
as they have been in the past. Only one instance do we have
Right.
it, and they even go so far to explain how this is the way it is, and it's such a clever way to kind of, because I forgot the Sylvine was on the cover by the time they actually showed up, so I was kind of like, whoa, that's kind of cool.
It felt like a huge reveal, even though it was telegraphed, even though you got that little bit. And that's when I began to, we had the next episode where it was, the law firm of Sylvine. Sylvine's like, okay, yeah, so we're totally going there.
Right.
But yet when the reveal happens, it still feels like a big reveal. And the beauty of it is, as you said, Glenn, that we're not taking him seriously. We're pointing out all of the flaws in the design of the monster. But because it's a book and it's open to the mind's eye, and we're just filling it in with the mental paintbrush of what has come before, we're not actually seeing it. We're not seeing the bad zipper effect. We're not seeing the gross out flatulence, oh, come on, and a fart jokes moment. We're not seeing all those things. And it almost makes them scarier. Like, I don't get me wrong, they're still laughable as villains.
See the bad CGI of them running.
Yeah, but it kind of, the paintbrush of your mind is so much better that it does kind of make them a more effective villain this way.
I would agree with the effective villain. I wouldn't say scarier, but I think maybe it does make them more menacing.
Menacing. There you go.
Yeah.
Good word. Yeah, I'll be honest. When I got to that moment, I had a chuckle because I thought, oh, this just took a left turn into Glenn's gonna hate it, Bill. I can see the diatribe coming.
I was prepared for it because, as you said, they were on the cover, so I knew they were going to show up eventually. So I had already made I had already not worried about that. And then
made your peace with it.
Yeah, exactly. Made my peace with it. And then they were so effective. Their use was so effective in this one. Even better than the blathering I thought that they did in the Sarah Jane Adventures. I thought, which I thought they was a step better than the Sylvine in that story. Although I think it works in Sarah Jane, maybe because it feels a little more like a kid's series rather than Doctor Who, but that's neither here nor there. I think they were very effective in this. And the second Doctor shows up, which is great. Although I wish we could have done
this.
I wish we could have done this just a week or two earlier, because then we would have done this before the second Doctor Adventures, James Robert McCrimmon, so that Jamie hadn't showed up yet. So this would have fit in there between World Games and this. So unfortunately,
I just think it's
didn't work out that way, but it is
funny.
still it is still
so serendipitous that we've been doing all this season 6B stuff and just happened to review a story that the second Doctor shows up in, and he's working for the CIA.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. When we listened to Robert McCrimmon and they did that whole backstory of adventures that we weren't privy to, didn't they throw a Slytherin reference in there?
Not that I remember.
Am I making that up?
I don't recall them. I don't recall that. They might have, but I don't
Okay.
recall that. But Jamie wouldn't have been present for that, though. The one that they definitely do call back to, we still haven't done yet either. So the Annihilators.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, so no, I don't recall that, but maybe. Although it does seem like we've had the Sylvine name dropped recently, but I can't remember where it was.
That's what I was thinking, but I'm getting old, so it's all
it all goes.
It's all a muddle.
Yeah, it all goes in and just becomes mush, and
yeah,
it's it used to be several courses. Now it's just stew.
You could tell me that next week we're going to be reviewing A Christmas Carol. It's the new episode with the new Doctor, and I'd be like, okay, starting over. I wouldn't be all new to me.
Back to this though. Yeah, just thoroughly enjoyed, and to me so far, I've enjoyed the Doom stuff, and up until now, I think the Missy comics were the best Doom stories so far, but this certainly now takes the top spot for me as far as the transmedia stories go. This one right now is my favorite, and I think This one, here's the other thing that I've had is I never really kind of felt like the other stories, and most of them, because they're truncated, have really given me a taste of who Doom is as an assassin. And I think this one gives enough character building that it makes the Doom that we see earlier on make more sense, if that makes any sense. Because this really kind of cements that, yeah, she is very good at her job. She maybe is the best assassin in the universe. I still don't know if that's true, but she certainly earns her reputation in this book. And so I think that was one of the things that I liked most about this, is that the character finally is developed enough for me to go, yeah, she really does know what she's doing. She's not this. I think what happened was they set up this story with a goofy, and I think everybody agrees that the trailer for this series was just a little bit too tongue-in-cheek. And I think nobody took it serious because it was Seuss Kempner, and she's a comedic actress. And I think that the start of that was wrong, because we haven't seen the goofiness. She's very tongue-in-cheek, and there are humorous moments.
She's snarky.
Yeah, she's snarky, but it's not kind of how they set this up. So I think this frames this really well. What this worries me now, though, is once we get to audios, particularly the big finish one where Seuss finally gets to portray the character 100% as playing Doom, I'm hoping that it's consistent, because I didn't think that the first stories we read were uneven, but there just wasn't enough of the character to really kind of understand. This kind of made the characterizations in those stories better for me. And so I hope that continues throughout the rest of this series.
Same. It very much retroactively fixed a lot of what had come before. Because I remember thinking, much like you, oh, she is competent. Mm-hmm. Because they told us she was this, badass assassin. But none of the early stuff really made me believe that. Mm-hmm. There were no daring escape hijinks after offing somebody, or Mission Impossible or James Bond style clinging to the outside of a gondola. Mm-hmm. It was just walk in, maybe poison them, maybe not, walk off. I mean, that was kind of low-key assassination squad stuff. Yeah. And a lot of them had complications to them. So it was like, oh, you're just not very good at this. But this was the first one that made me go, okay, yeah, you are good at this. I believe in you now as a character. Mm. And so that was a pleasant awakening.
The other good thing the book does is kind of dips into the bigger mystery that we've been trying to deal with throughout the entire story of, we don't know what incident triggered to make Doom think that Death is after her, other than the fact that we see Death after her in that comic. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. We don't know what happened in New Venice that set off this entire journey to get her back to the First Doctor, and we start to learn a little bit more about that in this story. And I think I kind of wish they had done some of this sooner, so I would care more about what's going to happen to Doom than I do.
Right. This makes you invest more in the character at this point.
Yeah, and I should have invested way more into this, 6 hours ago or something, instead of being halfway through her day left to live before I start to care if Doom lives or dies. Right. I mean, so I think there was a misstep there, and they should have potentially put this story earlier in those hours, so you could get some of those establishments of, oh, okay, this is why we have to try to track down the Doctor, even though we still don't really have a good idea of what the Doctor could potentially do, other than explain to her what happened to her.
Right.
And is it in this that they mention that her timeline is unraveling?
Yes. Yeah, it's this story that mentions that, yeah.
So that's an interesting idea that I want to explore more of.
Yeah.
I have a feeling we won't, though.
Probably not.
Yeah, from a cinematic standpoint, you're very much right. You needed something heavier for an inciting incident to grab you and make you pay attention to Doom's plight and make you care about what was going on. And then later in the run, you could have done the almost montage style. Here's a very quick page and a half story of this encounter, because by that point you're wrapped up in it, and so it's just speed running through these things, and here's a name drop or a character and cameo and things of that nature, and you would be more accepting of them at that point in the story, I think. Because we've tantalized you with this off the top. So I agree with you, Keith. I think they needed something a little, maybe not necessarily this story, but they certainly needed to open with something a little heavier hitting.
Yeah, I think it could have gone the Goss setup story. And then I even think this story would have worked out of the gate, too. I think that had they made this hours 2 through 5, I think that this would have set the tone and not had to retroactively fix the Doom that we had seen, because I think this would have built the character enough that those little jaunts to different locations would have been better, because I think we'd have felt like we were more familiar with the character by that point. And then I think what they needed to do is keep that the way it's going, and then bookended it by coming to either 4 from Doomsday, when we get to that, or coming to, as they're doing now soon, the Big Finish story and wrapping with that. I think maybe they would have done better to go that way. I think that my other problem that I'm going to have with it is I think that maybe missing and maybe I'll revisit this later, but I think maybe missing a beat and casting Suze Kempner as Doom, but then not giving me her voice off the top. That's been another thing that's been a struggle for me, because all I have to go by is those silly little ads that they run and the little previews that they do for the thing. And so I don't really feel like I even still have Suze Kempner's voice yet. So that, I think, would have also been beneficial, was to at least give us something with her doing the acting as well. But we'll see. Time will tell. We got more. Unfortunately, they chose to do the next mobile game story, which just completely slid backwards as far as quality.
It went
of this
down
whole
the toilet as far as quality.
For this whole thing, because really, more so than the last one, there's 2 locations through the whole thing, and our characters don't even move. I'm so disappointed. It's almost like East End Games did these as an afterthought. And the story, I mean, with the Chameleon story, I thought was okay, because even though we didn't get a lot of location changes and we still kept seeing the same images, it was intriguing because we had Chameleon disguised as the 13th Doctor, and we had that unraveling thing. And then we had the kind of funny tongue-in-cheek, the K9 has hired her to, thwart these pirates that are attacking the station. All that was kind of just fun and like, okay, that's lighthearted mobile game. That makes sense. This one then takes a 180 degree turn and tries to do something that I think just was terrible, which is she's here to kill this. He's not really a freedom fighter, but she kills this guy as a symbol of the resistance of this planet that has this fascist government. And she does it to frame, I don't know. It's just, I hated this. Yeah. I hated this with a passion.
Here are the 2 big problems with it. We go into it with absolutely no context, and don't know what's going on throughout almost the entire thing, despite the conversations, because it doesn't make any sense because we don't have any context. And then, even at the very end of it, she goes, "Well, that was a waste of my time."
Yeah, right. Which
it was a waste of mine
exactly.
too.
Which if you're telling your viewer or reader or whatever that the protagonist has wasted their time, then it's just like telegraphing to you that you wasted your time reading this. We have no investment.
We came off of the highest of the high.
Right, that's true.
So far with this saga.
It's a lot further.
And immediately went into the lowest of the lows with this saga.
I mean, I think had we had a familiar character even that she was interacting with, I might have had a little more investment in it, but I don't know this Martin. I don't know his family. I mean, I'm sorry that his family's going to die and he's going to end up being an unwitting martyr for a cause. But beyond that, it's just, I don't know. It's pointless. Very pointless.
And, so far, every story has tried to at least somehow connect to the Doctor in some way. And while I could see that being a challenge or repetitive, I do think it's kind of necessary considering the story that they're trying to tell. And the fact that this doesn't at all is to its detriment. It's not a refreshing change of pace because, we don't have to have the weight of the overall story going on. No, we kind of need that weight to get me through the story.
Mm-hmm.
And to not have that is a huge misstep.
I think this could have even been maybe even more of a lighthearted breather between the bigger picture.
If it was lighthearted.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was saying. Had they chosen a different route or a different story and just, I mean, it already invokes sort of a cartoony feel. Even the episodes that are running along in the game itself don't take themselves too seriously, if that makes any sense. They're done very kind of lighthearted, and that's helped by the fact that, or aided by the fact, I suppose, that the imagery of this is very cartoonish. And so, and I'm not saying that it's silly or funny or they're not taking themselves seriously, but they're not taking themselves too seriously with the stories they've been telling. And so I think it works. But this one just gets so deep that I think they should have just stayed with that kind of upbeat, fun, take a break from, the book before you lead into the audio, the 4-part audio that we're going to review next week. And so I think that could have been a nice little, just a breather, but they tried to do something that doesn't work.
Well, and she's looking for what appears to be the first Doctor.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the book makes it pretty clear that's the case. And she's only came across now 2, 9, and 6.
Mm-hmm.
And then Chameleon pretending to be the Doctor.
Right.
And Missy pretending to be the Doctor. I wouldn't want another story where there's someone pretending to be the Doctor, but at least you could at least have her meet another Doctor in the wrong order and be frustrated by that aspect and try and tease something else to come forward, not just this pointless story that depressed me.
Mm-hmm. Now, I guess you could argue she's been Doctor adjacent to 12 and 3, because in the Unicorn story, 3 would have been nearby, and in the Missy story, 12 was nearby. But so at least you get a nod to those Doctors. But you're right, and I suppose they could have even done that here. If you're going to do, you could have even done Doctor adjacent here, and had her not meet the Doctor, but had a near miss, just almost met the Doctor again in this one. I mean, I don't think she should be running into every incarnation of the Doctor in every story, because then it becomes tiresome, because, well, if the first incarnation of this Doctor you keep meeting has the answer, wouldn't you think that all of these Doctors have the answer you need?
They better give us a really good reason why the other version of the Doctor can't solve this issue for her.
I agree with you.
Especially the very next incarnation.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I would agree.
But the fact that she's the almost misses are kind of the fun of this story too.
Right.
So the fact that they had the potential to give us another almost miss and they wasted
and they
it.
missed
It
it.
was just yeah,
they missed
and
it
they
altogether.
Totally missed it. Yeah, it's a little frustrating.
Yeah. I'm just kind of, I think I'm also, part of me, and Sean's been here a long time, but I'm burned out on the game because this one in particular, what made it even worse was that they made this, I don't know, people probably aren't playing this game, but they made this more difficult to get the characters, the rewards than, I mean, they've done this to us before, but they did it again in this event, and it makes you, again, you've got a story that you're telling among a greater picture of a story, which is the transmedia event. You should be making this event just a little easier on us so we get the whole story. Because again, I had to go to the internet to find the last few panels of the story because I didn't get far enough in it because you made it too difficult.
Me too, without spending money.
Without spending money. There's a podcast, Cruising Through Doomsday, and right now I think their podcast is only on Podbean, so you do have to download the app to listen to them or listen to them through web browser. But it's Cruising Through Doomsday, which is a Bastille reference if you don't get that. But they made a really good point, and I haven't listened to their most recent, so I don't know what they said about this particular part of the mobile game. But on the first mobile game, they made a good point that it's not a pay to play, it's a play to win, it's pay to win. And so, yeah, and they're absolutely right. I mean, unless you're paying money on this, most of the time you're not going to, especially these events, you're not going to win the cards that you need. That's neither here nor there. One day we'll revisit Doctor Who Mobile and the Lost in Time mobile game and do a update on that game. But anyway, yeah, this was a complete disappointment, and I'm ready to move on.
Hi, I'm Rupert Booth.
I am known as Paul Ferry.
And my name is Barry Williams.
Together, we host Time Ram.
Time Ram's a cruel mistress.
It's a random number generator.
That also.
We roll a number from 1 to 13, and that's our doctor. Then 1 to 300 for the story, and then we ram them together.
Even if it doesn't make sense.
Cruel, I tell you.
Time Ram. Putting the wrong doctors in the wrong stories, so you don't have to.
You're listening to Travelling the Vortex.
What do we got coming up on the schedule, Sean?
Well, coming up next for us is some more 60th anniversary tie-in materials. We do the next Once in Future, which is part 4, Two's Company from Big Finish. And then the next installment of Doomsday, which is a BBC audio, 4 from Doomsday, which will cover hours 16, 17, 18, and 19. I will be on vacation. We are going to the wonderful world of Disney. And so the 2 remaining Vortex boys are going to tackle The Teeth of Ice, which is an 8th Doctor audio original. I like how you put an 8th Doctor audio on the calendar the week that I won't be here. Really appreciate you guys thinking of me there.
You can still listen to it.
and I may, since I will be on a plane. And then we're going to do The Annihilators as part of our season 6B, which is a BBC audio from it's a Big Finish audio. The 3rd Doctor Adventures box set 9. So all of that is coming up. And of course, as always, a note that the schedule is subject to change. If we get word that, Doctor Who comes on tomorrow, well, we're going to adjust to reprioritize a few things.
It'll probably drop the week you're in Walt Disney World.
I can't wait, let me tell you. Well, and it's on Disney now, so I'm pretty sure that's available in all the hotel rooms.
Oh, I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is.
You don't understand, man. I was there. I got it direct from the source.
I couldn't get any closer.
There is a Cardiff-sized riff under Disney World where Doctor Who just pours out of it into the world.
Well, Well, don't
Not
forget,
really.
if you
I
get
can't
any
back that up.
value out of this podcast, why not consider putting some value back into it? You can do that by clicking on the Patreon link and consider supporting us. And we do desperately need your help because we are coming up on a server payment very, very soon. And we want to make sure that we have the money to do that. So we are imploring you for some extra help. If you're already a patron member, maybe consider upping your patron contribution for a month so that we can make our payment, because we're going to be really close this time. And, and if you're listening to this and you're not a patron subscriber, if you want to pop in there, give us, just a little bit of money, help us out. We've got some great audios that we've been putting up there for you. Sean's been doing his Star Trek stuff. I've got some comic stuff. We've all been doing a Doctor Who quiz, which we've got another one coming up very soon. But yeah, if you want to pop in there, give us a few bucks. We sure would appreciate that. That's how we fund this podcast. It's from Patreon. It's from our listeners. We can't do this without you guys. We couldn't do this without having listeners. And we would just really appreciate if you guys could give us just a little bit back so that we can keep this podcast going. And of course, you can get the word out there about this podcast by giving us a 5-star review wherever you subscribe to this podcast. If you've already given us a 5-star review, great. If you haven't, go now to whatever podcast aggregator or catcher that you get our podcast from. Give us a 5-star review, please. It helps bump us up in the ratings and the recommendations. And of course, you can join in on the conversations in our listener forum on Facebook. Let us know what you want to hear. That's probably a direct route to us to let us know, how you're enjoying the show, what you guys are doing, what you're listening to, what you like about the show. If there's certain topics you want us to talk about, pop in there. Let us know. We keep an eye on those forums. And then, of course, you can engage with us on various social media. We are on X, which is formerly known as Twitter, at Travel Vortex. We're on Facebook. We have just a regular Facebook page as well. And we are on TikTok. And Threads is coming soon. We're on Instagram as well. We don't plug that very much, but because we're
also on Goodreads.
That's right. We are on Goodreads. We have a Goodreads group. In fact, we have a fine little group over there that is moderated by Holly, and she helps us pick what books we're going to read for the month, and then she's moderating that for us. And so go there. You can find like-minded people over there that enjoy reading Doctor Who books, along with a lot of the ones that we've already reviewed and ones that we're going to be reviewing. So I think that's it. Like I said, we're on Instagram, but we don't seem to post on Instagram until we go to conventions. So I guess we better go to a convention soon so we can post more pictures.
That's fair.
Right. Anything else we need to touch on before we close this one? If not, until next time, I'm Glenn.
I'm Sean.
I'm Keith.
Cheers.
Good night, everybody.
BC.
And thanks for listening.
You have been listening to Traveling the Vortex. Doctor Who and all of its associated programs are owned and trademarked by the BBC. No infringement is intended or implied.
Direction point! Direction point!
A Doctor Who podcast network.